we have to start understanding that likes and follows are inappropriate units of measurement to gauge engagement. They are not 100% reflective of your business's success or your audience or this idea of how big an audience is. It really doesn't matter how big an audience is. It matters how loyal an audience is and how much attention that audience is giving you. You get what I'm saying? Knowing how to sell something is a completely different art than getting someone to follow you. People think that they're the same skill set. They're two separate skill sets.
Hey, this is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 154 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. On last week's episode, we chatted with Lauren McGoodwin of Career Contessa, and we talked all about how you can make the best career moves for your dream driving journey. And on this episode, we are going to be chatting with writer Alex Wolf, and we're going to be answering the question, what is the best way to truly build a following and grow an audience? Sometimes I wonder, is there a different approach we should be using when thinking about our relationship with our community and our brand? And Alex would say yes. You may know Alex as a lady entrepreneur who built a cult following of over 500,000 millennials for her first brand, Boss Babe, in less than a year. And it's funny because she always gets the question why did you leave all that success to become a writer? And she talks about why in this episode. She also shares what we can do as dream drivers to truly resonate with our audiences and build brands that matter. Alex and I talk about her new book, Resonate, that takes a look at the intersection of human nature, technology, and how understanding both can help anyone or any creative build a following of their own. If you love this episode, though, as always, if you find that there is a part of this episode that really resonates with you, I'm asking that you please share on social. We are Dreams and Drive across the board on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, so make sure you're following us. Make sure you're tagging us with the hashtag Dreams and Drive. If you want today's show notes, just go to dreamsanddrive.com. You can get the link to Alex's book there as well. All right, let's hear from Alex. Hi, Alex. Welcome to this episode of Dreams and Drive. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Hi.
So as we were talking before, way back, episode 25 back, the guest, Anthony Frazier, he was like, you need to interview Alex Wolf on your show. She's dope. I checked out your stuff and I was like, oh my God, you're the person behind Boss Babe, which is what, I had followed Boss Babe for a while. So you've always been on my radar. I'm happy we're making it happen right now.
I'm excited.
So I like to start all our interviews going back in time, right? I think it's really important for us to reflect on who we were as children and what was inspiring us. So if I had to say who was the 9-year-old Alex, how would you answer that question?
I was a very inspired kid. I was always doing creative stuff, always playing on the computer. I've been playing on the computer since I was literally 3 or 4 years old, which sounds like an exaggeration, but it isn't. A lot of my inspiration came from playing video games, doing visual arts. I love to dance. I love to sing, just anything to creatively express myself. I love to make fake television shows on. I had a webcam that I would play and
How old were you?
I was like 8 or 9.
Wow, a webcam? Wow, your parents, your father let you use the computer to that extent?
Yes.
Okay.
I always say that the computer was like my sibling because I grew up as an only child and I went to the computer to have fun and play. And so there was no YouTube or anything, so it was literally just it was fun seeing, that was back when it was really cool to see your face on a computer screen. That's not a big deal anymore. But, so I've always liked to explore, expressing myself in a lot of different ways. And I did that very easily as a kid. And you get older and it wasn't as easy, but I'm starting to give myself more permission to be like that now.
What do you think you love the most about technology at that age?
That's a really good question. What did I love the most about technology? You know what I love? I always say that I feel most at peace when there are unread books in my house. Like if every book in my house is something I've read, I get anxiety because I like the feeling of knowing that I can't know everything.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying there. Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to technology, I think it can easily feel, and I think when I was younger, what I really loved was that there were all these programs and all these buttons and all these things I could do. And it always felt like there was more to learn on the platform. After I learned how to use Word, I started using PowerPoint and, Paint. And there was all these things to explore within this one medium, and that really stimulated my mind and my creativity.
So I want to get back to that because I think your relationship with technology now is something that's also very interesting. But I have to ask you this: are you somebody who likes iPads and tablets and stuff? Because I feel like I still love the very physical act of reading books. What's your take on that?
Oh, well, I think iPads are cool, but I love physical books as well. I actually saw some really cool studies done that most people prefer physical books. And even though ebooks are a thing, they're not enough of a thing to really threaten books being purchased. So that's that's a warm thing to know, especially as a writer. The thing though is that a lot of people, what stops people from buying books is not that they don't love physical books more than ebooks. It's that they don't have time to read, which is kind of sad. That's the reality we live in. But physical books all day, for sure.
But it's funny, we don't have time to read, but we have time to scroll, right? Because you think about the amount of time that we're on our devices and stuff.
I think the better term is people don't have the attention span to read. Because I find that most people, especially millennials, we want to read. We have the desire. I can't think of one person I know who doesn't want to read more. But we're an adaptive species, so we are all adapted to having a lot of visual stimulation right now, intensely, more than we've ever seen throughout human history. We see different, the experience of scrolling, it's one image after the next and you're very visually stimulated. And because we're visual creatures, looking at, words on a page that are just sitting there are not as visually compelling, even though they could be compelling once you apply effort and try to comprehend the words themselves. But a lot of us we're trained not to put effort into trying to comprehend things because images don't necessarily need us to do that in order to understand them. So we're dealing with a very interesting time right now in media consumption.
Yeah, that is very interesting. But let's get back to you as a child. So what was the dream? Adolescent Alex, what did you think you would be? And I'm saying this in air quotes, when you grew up.
I always wanted to be famous. I wanted to be significant. And I can only say that with confidence now because I've seen sort of how that desire has shifted throughout my life. And I talk about this a lot in my book, where a lot of my drive on getting social media was about feeling like I wanted to be seen. And I think a lot of people in our society, particularly, young women, feel like having attention and having recognition, no matter where it may be. But, I think online is a obvious choice for today. Is something that's really desired. So when I was younger, I wanted to be significant, and I was open-minded about how that would look, whether it would look like, me being a host of some kind, or, it was before you could really fathom the idea of being a social media influencer. So it was just kind of figuring out something that would be along those lines, but for that time.
Yeah, I definitely know how that feels. Because I know when I was younger, I always had this feeling of, and it's hard to describe how that manifested when I was younger, but I had this feeling that I was special in some way, right? Not in a bragging type of way, but I always felt like there was something more that I didn't yet know how that would manifest when I grew up. So I definitely feel you in that one. So you had this idea, you wanted to be famous, you wanted to leave a mark on the world in some way. How did that end up playing out for you? Maybe we can talk about how Boss Babes came about.
I was like on this journey to figure out how to put myself out there. You know, I was like a model for a while. I was on an agency for a while, and I had been like going to all these like seminars to figure out like how to get on television, because this was like 2013, 2014. So like social media was a thing, but it's not like it's a thing now. Right. Mm-hmm. And it was still seen, television was still seen as like the primary, like you've made it kind of space. Like once you're on TV, you've made it. So I went to this seminar on how to be a host in Los Angeles, and the woman there was like, you know, people don't watch TV anymore. Everything's about social media. And me being someone who's been on social media forever, was like, really? Like, is she really saying that? And she was saying how, you know, everyone on TV is focusing on finding people who are already on social media, or, you know, people who are in charge of what gets on television. I was like, okay, I can do that. You know, like I'm on here all the time. And another thing that was happening around that time is that I noticed a trend in young women, you know, sort of feeling like they should be able to express themselves how they want to and be taken seriously professionally. So, you know, women dyeing their hair pink or having a certain strong sense of fashion and or a sense of style, and not wanting to sacrifice any of that in their workplace. And I thought of this concept of the boss babe, which is the woman who's able to, you know, be herself aesthetically and, you know, crush it professionally. And that's sort of how that brand started. And I was like, okay, if it has to start on social media, like, so be it. Yeah, I started an Instagram account, and it started off with just quotes, motivational quotes. This was like, no one ever believes me, but like there were motivational quotes on Instagram, but none of them were like for women. Like they were all very masculine.
What year was this?
2014.
Okay.
So like all the motivational accounts were like, you know, they were like masculine with like Ferraris and lions, and
they still are, right? A lot of them still
are. But I'm saying like there were whereas now I feel like there's way more of a presence of, you know, female sort of entrepreneurial motivation on social media. So that's how that started, and it grew viral, and it's sort of like the thing that everyone has been really impressed with in my career, because, you know, a multitude of how many people it grew online and how quickly it grew, got a lot of attention from other brands who were interested in appealing to millennials. And so I've been sort of spending the past few years talking about it, writing about it, and a lot of what my new book is about has to deal with how to create audience in a way that, you know, what I would call reverse engineers how I did it with Boss Babe.
So in Alex's new book, right, it's all about resonating. So if we were to look at Boss Babe, if we were to make a case study, why do you think, like, what was the number one reason why you think the idea, the concept of Boss Babe resonated with so many millennial women?
Well, I think it was a few things. I think timing has a lot to do with things. So like I said, I noticed a trend happening in the culture. Mm-hmm. And I sort of created a cultural space for that trend to manifest. So the thing about culture, and you can find this with any like trend or anything that gets popular, is that it's happening already, but someone comes in and takes advantage of it. A great example is with Facebook. Facebook is not the first social media to come out, and it's neither the best social media to come out, but because of the time it came out, the trend in society was that people were more comfortable with having online profiles. And so he created this cultural space at that time, and he probably didn't even realize it, but he created that cultural space to have that profile. And because it was popular to do that at that time, it took over. So it's a very similar pattern with Boss Babe, where women were going to, you know, express themselves fashion wise and aesthetically either way. But Boss Babe came in and said, we recognize that, we honor that, we think that's cool, we accept you for who you are already. And it really created this identity for people to feel affirmed in and confident with. And I give other examples in the book. I think another great example is Sex and the City. Like Sex and the City the show. Do you like that show?
You know what? I am so ashamed to say this on air, but I have probably watched about 3 minutes of Sex and the City total.
Is that because you don't like it, or is just...
I have no opinion because I never really watched a full episode, but I definitely am familiar with the culture.
All the female audience members right now are going, what?
But listen. I definitely know the culture of, like, I feel like I know what it means in popular culture, but okay, keep going, girl.
Well, and you know what? That's a great example, because you don't even have to watch the show to understand its cultural relevancy. Mm-hmm. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's because it created that space in the culture to be sort of like the independent single girl in the city, you know, living her life. So, you know, those are some of the main reasons why I think it resonated so much. It was the timing, and it was because I created that cultural space.
So thinking about, if you go back to those days, like although it was going viral, what was still something very challenging about building and staying relevant? Or staying of value, I should say, making sure you were continuing to deliver value to your audience.
Here's how I think of value and staying relevant. I believe there's a difference between art and entertainment. And I think that it doesn't matter if you have a business, it doesn't matter if you're an artist. These are important distinctions to make. And now when it comes to entertainment, this is what most of our culture is made up of. It's made up of stuff that distracts us from, you know, ourselves, from our goals, from what we want to do. And when we're on Instagram, when we're on social media, when we're watching television, everything, I would argue that 90 to 95% of the stuff on there is designed to get you to have a bodily response, which is resonating, right? Because the reason why I called my book Resonate is because I mean it in the literal sense, where you get a physiological experience. So you either impulsively laugh, you impulsively cry, you impulsively go, like, dang, that was good. You know, when you create that kind of reaction out of the human body, it sort of creates this like screenshot for your body. And your body says, oh, I have to save that. There's something about that that's really good. Now, this can happen with entertainment. You know, you look at someone like Kim Kardashian, and she is, for many people, entertainment. They see her stuff and they get those physiological feelings, whether it's inspiration, whether, you know, for a lot of the guys, they're getting, you know, they like what they see.
Stimulated.
Yeah. And the downfall to entertainment, and I think it has its place, and I think everyone needs a little bit in their life, but the downfall is that we're 100% addicted to it as a culture, and it can only stay alive by constantly being re-exposed. What is the main part of like the Kardashian business plan? They have to constantly come up with sort of these things, these you know, publicity stunts and things like that to stay relevant. That's the only way, or else we'll forget about them. And that's with any sort of form of entertainment. Now, when it comes to art, and like I said, when I say art, I don't want the business people to turn their ears off, because there's principles within art that you can use within your own brand, and it really creates this strong reaction. Art does the same thing. It gets people to have a physical response, but the difference is that it does not distract you from yourself. It brings your awareness back into yourself. So that's one part of it. And the other part is that it doesn't need to constantly be re-exposed. So many people out there right now are they're totally freaked out about, how do I like post something every week? How do I post something every day? Those are fair questions. They're not getting directly at what matters, which is, how can I create something so that people will never forget about me? So when you look at someone like Maya Angelou, right? Maya Angelou is now passed away. She is just as relevant as when she was, you know, alive. Like, people will still search for her stuff. Her legacy lives on because she created artwork that resonated with people and put their consciousness in themselves. It didn't distract them away from themselves. And I've noticed how with material like that, with work like that, you don't have to worry about how do I stay relevant, because you're creating such a great experience for the people who are interacting with it that they put in the work to make yourself relevant in their own lives. You get what I'm saying?
No, I definitely get what you're saying. And I think this is so important, because I was literally having a conversation with an associate a few weeks ago, and I went to him basically in a funk about Dreams and Drive. I was like, you know what? I think I have good content. I'm really stuck with like, how do I get it? How do I like get more exposure? How do I build my audience? And so we got into this debate about whether I should try to, basically he said I should go the influencer marketing route. Well, not really influencer marketing, but basically he said I need to switch my content, right? He's like, you know, Raina, the stuff you talk about is all right, but no one really cares about that. You have to make it appeal to the masses. And the way he was describing it, I just had to laugh because I knew I would never do it. Like I wouldn't go like the whole like Instagram model route and try to, you know what I mean? Like that's just not me. But I think a lot of people are stuck within like this whole idea of which way do you go? Like, do you start as entertainment just to get the following and then switch to art? So it can be hard because for a lot of people, it's like, but I still want to grow my audience, you know?
Well, here's the thing. I have a lot to say on all of that.
Girl, I had a lot to say too. I was like, what?
Let's start with why.
Okay.
Why do you need to build a following? Not just you, anyone listening, anyone who feels this pressure to be a somebody. Why do you feel the pressure? Is it because this is your dream and, you know, all you want is to be able to book shows or, you know, you want to be able to sell your I was going to say CD. There's no CD. To sell your music or sell your books, because there's a bunch of people who feel this pressure to be significant online and have a following online. But the reason is not for anything business related, and it's entirely based off of just sort of like insecurities and ego. And that's fine. It's honestly fine because, like I said, that's how I got started. I didn't know why I wanted a following, but I knew that I wanted it. And now I can look back and see, oh, I wanted it because I feared the feeling of being insignificant. That's not something social media will ever help you with. It won't matter if you get 1 million followers. If that's the root problem, that's not going to solve it. So let's start with that. So if your reason is, okay, I want a following because I'm a creative and I don't want to work for anyone and I have this great book idea, or I'm a performance artist, or I'm a consultant and I need people to buy my stuff. Okay, great. So you do need an audience. Great. Let's work with that. We have to start understanding that likes and follows are inappropriate units of measurement to gauge engagement. They are not 100% reflective of your business's success or your audience, or this idea of how big an audience is. It really doesn't matter how big an audience is. It matters how loyal an audience is and how much attention that audience is giving you. I've worked with some influencers who have a bunch of followers and they can't sell a thing because they don't know how to sell anything. You get what I'm saying? Knowing how to sell something is a completely different art than getting someone to follow you. And people think that they're the same skill set. They're two separate skill sets. So, and then the other thing I wanted to say is that there's no such thing as the masses. That is a myth. That is a concept that was birthed during the rise of radio and television advertisements, where we had way less data on people. And when we had, 30 channels, television channels, we spoke of people in masses because they were thought of as, the group of people who tune in at 7:00. And that's really an ambiguous description. And that's all we had. Now, if someone wants to figure out what you Googled last night, you know what I'm saying? Like if someone wants to figure out what your interests are, we all are carving these individual sort of paths of interest online, which means there is no mass. There are just small niches and clusters of people who have similar interests. There's no mass. Because you get what I'm saying? Because now where we went from 30 channels, we now have billions and billions of little channels that we all tune into at different times of the day.
So how should people view, especially people who are, let's say, in the beginning stages of building their brands or whatever they're creating, how should you view those that just by facts have a lot of followers and are presumably doing very well in however that person defines well? Like, should you just kind of see that as an anomaly or just stay focused on what you're doing and not even compare yourself in that way?
Well, I would say 100%, avoid comparing yourself And again, and understand it's deceiving. Instagram looks completely different than what real life looks like. We all know this. Just think of your own life. Mm-hmm. You know, Instagram is a metaphor for your life. Instagram is how you choose to portray your life. It is not your life. That's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like a clock is not time. A clock is the metaphor for time. It's how you can categorize time. And that's what Instagram is. It's not the actual thing. And the tricky part about it is that it looks like it. Unfortunately, a lot of people this past year who have committed suicide, some of the first thing I've noticed people will say was, well, they look so happy on their Instagram.
I hate when people say that. Like, you don't know what that person's life really was like, you know?
It takes 1 second to smile for a photo. That is not representative of your life. You know what I'm saying? And of your mood. It takes 1 second to smile. We all fake smile. So that can't, you know what I'm saying? And so it's just like, I think if you're trying to build your brand, you have to start getting very comfortable with the fact that you're dealing with a deceptive tool. And that, not that that's a bad thing, but that's a very powerful thing. And you have to be very careful about how you perceive that tool yourself and how you use that tool to communicate to other people, which I think most people are negligent about and aren't even conscious about.
So I'm going to introduce a fake client right now, right? Let's say you were talking to Rita and Rita came to you and said, hey, Alex, like my goal, my why is I'm an artist, and I want to build a following so that I can sell out shows to showcase my art, right? Because that's her goal and you understand her why, then how can she tangibly go about diving into her niche and getting as much of those in her niche interested about her?
That's a good question. So again, the way I determine whether or not you're going to grow an audience is how well can you resonate with people. Okay. If you take your best piece of work, I would tell Rita, what is your best piece of work? I would say, how can you create a piece of, either use the work that you already have or make something that can resonate online. So whether it's a video, whether it's a poem, whether it's something visual, and the way she'll know if it resonates is simply from the response. I don't care about likes. I don't care about follows. You know what I care about? I care about shares and I care about saves. How many people have shared your stuff and how many people have saved it? Those are acts of real engagement, because if someone feels compelled to keep something, that is a prerequisite for purchase behavior. You know, it's like, how many times do you screenshot something when you want to buy it, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's the first act of like resonating. That's the first action that happens after that. And the other thing is that if someone comes across Rita's stuff and she makes sure she does a good job of putting a resonating piece of work out there, something that makes people go, you know, really just makes them have a genuine reaction, because so much of us are numb when we're scrolling. We show up 80% of the time, not because we want to even be there. We're there because our brain has been, programmed to go back because of the dopamine. Our consciousness is not even fully active. And so if you even dare to try to get someone's attention through that scroll, it needs to be something that causes that physical reaction. If she shows it to 10 people and none of them feel compelled to tell someone else about it, then it's not going to prosper. Because if you really think about it, an audience is just people who have talked a lot. It's someone told someone else and someone told someone else and someone told someone else. But it has to be good enough for people to want to share it. So those would be the main focus points I would tell her.
I love that. And one thing I wrote down here is you also have to look at metrics, right? Because I think a lot of times you mentioned the metrics, but people don't even know that those metrics are available. Like when you mentioned saves, I went to my Instagram and was like, wow, I forgot that you can check to see how many people save something, to see how to see how it's engaging. Because right now on Instagram at surface level, all you see is like, likes or how many follows you have. But if you go into the insights some more, you can get the data that actually matters. So Alex, you ended up selling Boss Babe and you decided to focus on your writing. Why that shift? And, what has come of that for you personally?
The big reason for the shift is because I realized I didn't want to be the head of a huge company. It's very stressful. I was really young when I started Boss Babe. I was 21. I was really just a kid with an iPhone, right? That's how I look at it now. And I had to be really honest with myself. And of course that was hard, right? Because it's like, oh, I'm the boss babe. Like, you can't not want to be the boss when you're the boss babe. But what I learned in that process is that my expertise lies in branding more than in operations. And branding is the most, it's the most elusive part of the business. And branding is a social thing. It's not even a business thing. And it overlaps heavily with artwork and art in general. And so I feel way more at peace and happy within the creative spaces. And that's where I'm meant to be. So, that's what I've decided to focus on.
How did your art change when you made the switch?
Here's the thing I've noticed. I love CEOs. Like, I love business people. I love business women. I think they're phenomenal. I can sit and just listen to them all day long.
I could sit and read books about them too and like watch YouTube videos, all that stuff, TED Talks. I'm with you on that one.
But one of the biggest issues I had with being in that space was I felt like I didn't have any room to breathe. Meaning that I wanted to write about my problems. Like, I wanted to write about life. I didn't want, the thing is, when you're running a business, you can't be vulnerable in the same way you can when you're an artist. And it's unfortunate, and I don't make the rules, but I really was like craving this freedom that I felt and that I saw artists being able to have. Like, if I'm going through something, I want to be able to write about it, and I want to express myself to my audience with it. And I think I was having a lot of cognitive dissonance with being seen as this like ultimate business, mogul, and dealing with like real life drama and feeling like I had no space to breathe. And I was like, I never want to do this again. And I also noticed the twinkle in women's eyes when they would look at me, like I figured everything out, and I'm very uncomfortable with that. And I think it comes from a beautiful, sweet place. But I was like, whoa, like, I want to feel like I'm on the same level as you. Like, I want my followers and everyone to know that, like, I'm 25. Like, I don't even know what's going on. Like, let's just all,
I'm figuring it out just like you.
Exactly. And I'm way more comfortable with that dynamic. And I feel like as an artist, I get to play in that space where, for me personally, as being branded as a business person, as someone who knows everything about business, I felt like I didn't have that same space. And that's my personal opinion. I don't want to speak for every, business women. I think they all have their own thoughts on it, but that was my experience.
And I think, one thing that really resonated with me when you said that, and I had that visceral reaction, right? Like, it was this idea of, and I've been having this conversation. So I'm working with a branding coach just about like how I'm showing myself in this world. And one of the things he said is like, Raina, you aren't necessarily working within your gifts. A lot of us run from our gifts, right? Like my innate gift is I'm a storyteller. I love stories. I love telling stories. But for some reason, I was trying to brand myself as this email automation expert and a social media marketing, and it's like, at the end of the day, I love telling stories and I love talking to people about their stories, but there was something in me that wouldn't accept that as being my gift. You get what I mean?
Yep.
What do you think is your gift, and how are you making sure that you're living it and you're, embracing it? Like, how would you respond to that?
Yeah, well, I think what you're talking about is something I've been thinking about recently as sort of like the pre-dream and the real dream. Mm-hmm. Like, I think many of us go after this pre-dream, which is something where it's like, it's a goal that sounds really, really nice and will impress a lot of people and perhaps even impress yourself, but it's not really a real dream. Because the pre-dream, it's a pretty goal, but it's really like, it's pretty attainable and usually involves less risks. Whereas your real dream is kind of like a sloppy, huge, like shadow that's like, hey, actually, you're a storyteller. and you're kind of like, no, like, I don't even know what
I'm
you
not.
want me to
I'm
do.
an email automation expert.
Exactly. Like, let me just make this bread and peas. I don't know what you want me to do with this storytelling thing. Like, I can't even step into that place because it's just so big and it's so, it's hard to understand how to navigate something like that, where I feel like email automation, that's a very structured, pathway to navigate. Right. Mm-hmm. And so for me, what I've come to realize is that I think my gifts are along the lines of articulation. Like I feel like I'm confident in being able to explain things that are hard for people to understand. Mm-hmm. And that's only because of the feedback I get a lot of the time, where people will be like, wow, I never thought of it in that way, but you said it exactly in a way that makes sense. Right. And I think that, writing, I think there's something with words that I'm meant to be doing. I'm definitely inspired by visual arts, and I paint and watercolor for fun and stuff like that. But writing, when you even think about how I started with Boss Babe, it was really quotes that grew that audience. It was quotes that resonated with people. So it's always sort of been expressing myself through words.
No, I love that you mentioned that. And I think one thing that I'm getting from your story is it's a journey, right? Like, you started out wanting to be famous, right? And that evolved into where you are now. So for anyone listening in who you may feel like, oh, I'm not at that level yet, or I'm not figuring it out, it's all right, because we're still figuring it out too. If you talk to us in 5-10 years, we might be at a different point along our journey. So I think that's something that a lot of us we're struggling with, because we think we have to be on this timeline that somebody else has created. Not even for us, but just for everyone. It's like, no, we all have our unique timelines.
Yep, absolutely.
So one thing that I want to ask you, though, because, we all have to live at the end of the day, right? We need money. We need to be able to provide for ourselves. How do you strike that balance? Like, how do you still be in yourself, use your gifts, create art that you love and that resonates with people, but at the same time, you're getting paid for what you're worth?
Yeah, I think it's really about not being afraid to study supply and demand. And when I say that, I mean, like, if you're creative and you're not, investing time in learning sort of like basic business principles that involve, understanding what this market you want to emerge involves, and even it doesn't matter if you're trying to sell paintings for millions of dollars. These are all markets that you can research very well and understand how transactions in these markets work, because someone's paying someone. And I think a lot of creative people are intimidated by doing that research, because I think many creative personality types really steer away from that knowledge. But if anyone's trying to be self-sufficient, and like you said, everyone's got to eat, these are transactions you really want to understand like the back of your hand. And like I said, it's like someone's paying someone. So figure out why someone is paying someone, because it all comes down to desire. Someone desires something for a certain reason. And whatever you want to make, you have to figure out why people desire things like you make, and how to cultivate that desire so that you can, make a profit from it, and really being comfortable with that.
Where or what resources would you recommend for people to start this research? Because some people may think that everything can be found on Google. Did you use something else, or do you have other resources that you tap into?
Well, I think it's going to be an organic path for each person.
Okay.
So for me, I research books. I Google books. I'm a graduate of YouTube University. That's what I like to
yes,
say.
Girl. Me too.
So get your butt online and learn. How they say there's things that you don't know, and then there's things you don't know that you don't know. Mm-hmm. When it comes to understanding the market, and when I say the market, I don't mean the stock market. I don't mean Wall Street. I mean someone is paying someone. Figure out what the personality type of that someone is and why they're buying it. Think, really, really study that psychographic. Think outside the box. you can't just expect the words to be there on the screen. You have to read between the lines. Okay, so if someone bought this for that, why did they buy it? You know, if like, and this is why I get so thrilled with branding, because, you know, brands are invisible. I always say you can't see a brand. People think a brand is a logo and a color, and I'm like, you're lost. A brand is completely invisible. You're buying something. People buy things they can't see. So as someone who's creative, as someone who's trying to get that bag, you know, you got to be like, what invisible thing do people buy when they buy stuff like I sell? And I know that sounds elusive, and partly because it is, but when you really start to get yourself familiar with, you know, purchasing behavior and buying behavior, it will really make sense. And even think about yourself, you know, like some girl at a conference I was speaking at raised her hand and asked, like, how do I stand out? And I was like, what bag do you have right now? And I was like, why do you have that bag? I was like, would you buy another bag? Why did you choose that bag? There's a bunch of bags, ladies. Like, we know how many bags there are. We know how many purses there are. You bought that specific purse for a certain reason.
So how does that make her stand out? Like, if she were to answer it and say, hey, I bought it because it was on sale, what does that mean?
Well, it's not the bag is not making her stand out. It's the bag stood out to her.
Oh, okay. I get what you're saying. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what made that bag stand out to her? So maybe it was on sale, but still, okay, it stood out because it was on sale, but is that the only reason why you bought it? I'm sure you bought it because you liked it aesthetically. Maybe you thought the brand was going to, you know, amp up your status. Like, you know, there's girls out here buying Chanel bags because, not necessarily because they love the bag, but they love how the bag makes them be perceived. That's what most designer luxury brands have perfected. It's not necessarily the quality of the Nike shoe that makes it be able to be sold for that price. It's the identity behind the logo. It's what it means to wear the Nike shoe. Mm-hmm. That's the invisible part, and that's what you're really buying. And that's why you buy the Nike shoe over the no brand shoe, even though they could be the same shoe. So, and that's the invisible part. And so that's what I'm saying, where it's like, those are the kinds of things you want to study. And it really can just start with yourself. Just pay attention to every little thing you're buying. Why are you buying it?
So when it comes to your book, Alex, Resonate, what do you hope that people walk away from it feeling after reading it?
Honestly, I just want to feel, again, like re-emphasizing the point that I want to feel bonded with my followers and my readers. I want them to see that, like, I don't know, I just feel like I poured my heart into it. Mm-hmm. And I want to feel like they can feel that I poured my heart into it. I mean, obviously I want them to have like great, you know, marketing information because that's in there, but there's also a lot of personal stories, and there's also a lot of like opinions about how scared I am for our culture and our society. And I'm really like sort of reaching out this hand of like, hey, like, this is not for IG models who are trying to get, you know, 1 million followers. These are really for like the mom and pop sort of, you know, parts of Instagram, the people who really want to create something real. Because I really, I have significant concerns about where we're going as a culture that is addicted to social media and that is addicted to entertainment that distracts us from ourselves. And I really want to motivate people to make something more meaningful and not just, you know, pop up a blog with pretty colors because that's what's the cool thing to do, but because there's something you really want to say. So those would be along the lines of what I want people to take away.
If we don't change, like, or if our culture doesn't make a shift back to that authentic, genuine discussions and conversations, like what is your concern? What do you think will happen to us as individuals?
Well, I don't think we're going to shift back anyway. And I don't necessarily think it would be shifting back to anything better, because I know I'm not necessarily advocating that the past was better. I think what's going to happen is that we're going to have countercultures that sort of are more conscious about their relationship with technology and social media. And at this point, I just want to be able to cultivate and encourage those types of countercultures. So I think the majority of our culture is shifting into virtual reality. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean like the big bulky thing on your head. I think that we already are in a virtual reality, sort of in the same way, like, you know those like old Apple computers, the old Macintosh computers, when you see them, you're like, God, that thing is big.
Like the ones that, like the color ones, like you were cool if you had a color desktop Mac. I remember that.
Oh, I'm talking about even like older than that. I'm talking about those like caramel colored, like those tan.
Oh,
like big,
yes. I remember those.
That like did one thing, you know. I feel like we're at that stage technologically with the virtual reality. So like we don't have the enhanced version. We're still in that like that prehistoric state of it. But if you pay attention, and depending on what circle you're in, the virtual reality, meaning Instagram, social media, is taken more seriously than the physical reality. And that's the part that concerns me, where I'm like, uh-oh. Like people think
deep. That's so true. Think about it. Like, I feel like sometimes you are expected to post your life on Snapchat. People will be like, what's wrong with you? You haven't posted in 5 hours. Are you okay? Like, it's really true.
Right. It's technically a reality in the sense that you have an identity. It's like everyone sort of like logs in, you have friends, like it's technically a reality. And yeah, I've watched it in the past 5 to 7 years sort of come from this like side by side reality to now a dominant reality. And I think it's just going to turn more and more into that. And like I said, I think we're in that like early MacBook phase part of it, because I think in the next 5 to 10 years, it'll be like way more intense. And again, my plan is not to stop that momentum. It's just to get people to be conscious of it and kind of decide for themselves how they want to participate in that cultural change.
So as we wind down, Alex, I really want to ask you this, thinking about your journey, thinking about all the challenges you've had to navigate, what's something that you had to sacrifice in order to be where you are now, or a major challenge that you had to navigate that you might not have expected?
I'm very grateful that I had like quote unquote early success, but I definitely have in the past few years noticed how much that has had an impact on me versus sort of like peers and other people. And I would say it's just been kind of a challenge to grow in the public eye. Like I'm like very appreciative and grateful that I have people who've been following me for 5 years, but it's also kind of like, wow, like people have seen me, everyone wishes they could just be seen in their best moments. Like, wait, let me go figure all this out and I'll come back when I'm brand new and shiny and perfect. But I'm realizing like that is absolutely never going to happen, and that's not a thing. And that was a challenging thing to accept, but I'm really starting to find the beauty in that. And like I said, I'm like, wow, now my goal is not how do I become like the girl that, everyone wants to be, which I feel like is so much part of like why people desire that fame and that Insta fame. It's like you want that sort of like, you want people to envy you. And I've really evolved out of that into just wanting people to connect with my work, because I'm like, that to me feels so much better than, people falling in love with a perception that doesn't necessarily reflect my heart and my soul. So.
And that's true legacy when you think about it, right? It's like the legacy that will go on, that will live on beyond you in a way.
Yeah.
So let's go into our lightning round, Alex. This part of the interview, I'm going to give you a prompt, and I want you to tell me the first word that comes to mind, and we're sticking with our whole dreams and drive metaphor, okay?
Okay.
All right. The first word is park.
Prospect.
Reverse.
Drive.
Neutral.
Tan.
Drive.
Car.
When I said park, you said prospect real quick. That's that Brooklyn in you, right?
Yes.
All right. And if you want to be a dream driver, you have to have your keys to success. So tell me 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road. You need compassion for yourself, because if you like go in there and you're going to beat yourself up every day, it's just going to be way worse. You just got to know you're going to have mistakes, and you just got to like be really nice to yourself. Even on days where you like made a huge mistake, like just wake up and just be like, I'm just going to be nice to myself. I know I messed up. I'm going to have that compassion
because there's no point in like overdoing the beating up. It's just going to make you feel like crap. 2 keys to success. Prioritize happiness over money. Prioritize happiness over status. Just like prioritize your happiness over like whatever perception, whatever you think you need to be loved. You should know that you deserve to be loved right now. You don't need, you don't need 1 million followers. And another thing for success is have fun. Understand that, like, even if you mess up, the trade-off is like you're living a creative life, you're living a free life, and that part of living a free life is you're going to mess up, but you really win in the end because you're being free and you're doing what you want to do, even if you're not doing it perfectly, and that's way better than doing something you don't want to do.
Thank you. These are all great tips. In this conversation, I think people will definitely want to listen to it twice because you dropped some gems, especially when you talked about resonating, that I think a lot of us aren't thinking about because we're so caught up in, as you said, something that doesn't really matter at the end of the day, right? So thank you for sharing that, Alex. Can you tell our dream drivers where they can find you online if they want to check out more of your work and buy your book?
Yes, so I have an email list at alexwolf.co. So I highly recommend you sign up for the newsletter. I send out whatever stuff from my head. I'm also on social media, and you can follow me on Instagram at alexwolf.
All right. And I have one last question for you because, I think sometimes when we're dream driving, we may have the urge to give up. What keeps you going on those times when you might just want to throw in a towel and say, F this, I'm going to Mars?
Sometimes I just say F this and go to Mars by painting and coloring and going to the park. And I really emphasize play in my life. And play really feels like going to Mars on those days where you just want to give up. Just know you can play. You don't got to take everything so seriously. We're all going to die, so you might as well have a little fun.
I love a quote you said, and I think in a previous interview, we're all weirdos, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
All right, so that's a wrap for episode 154 with Alex Wolf. I hope that you guys enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey as well as her keys to success. And if you enjoy learning about how you can resonate and build an audience, build a following, please share this with a friend. I say this all the time, but you guys going out there sharing these episodes, telling other people about dreams and drive is the best gift you could ever give me. Like, I'm telling you, when you screenshot, when you follow us on social, when you're sharing, when you're tagging and using the hashtag dreams and drive, that goes a long, long way. So keep on doing it. And if you've done it in the past, I appreciate you and I thank you. And also make sure that you are subscribed wherever you're listening, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Google Play, wherever. Hit that subscribe button so that you get notifications every time we have a new episode. And if you're an Apple Podcast, the thing that I would really love is if you left us a rating and a review. So I'm going to read a review for you guys. And this one is coming from LaPorsche. I hope I'm saying that right, LaPorsche. And it starts off with something for everybody. I love this show. Every episode has something that I can relate to, but these last 2 episodes, Stop Playing Small and the interview with Kayla Walker, I really felt those. Raina encouraged me to set really huge goals for myself, so even if I fail, which I hope I don't, I'll still have achieved a lot because my goal was so big. I love the interview with Kayla. She spoke to me when she talked about moving in silence. I don't think people understand how much it is to make real moves and post about them. If you don't have an amazing balance, you can fall too deep into posting on social media and not making enough moves. It was awesome to hear her say that it's okay to just be making moves and not worrying about posting them until we reach a huge milestone. Thank you both for the great advice and motivation. Best wishes, and I can't wait to meet you both. Thank you so much, LaPorsche. I really do appreciate that. Those 2 episodes were really good too. I really do. Thank you, LaPorsche, or is it LaPorsche? Oh, I'm sorry if I get it wrong, but I just want to say thank you so much, and thank you for leaving such a detailed comment and heartfelt comment. This warms my heart to know that you really felt those episodes, and you were able to come out with such, specific takeaway action points. Keep dreaming, keep on your own mission. I don't know exactly what it is that you're doing, but I'm telling you that if you apply that, if you apply the whole of making really huge goals for yourself, if you apply the idea of being focused on your goals and not focused on posting them for social media or whatever, you will get far. So I'm wishing you the best of luck. And if anyone else wants me to read their review on the next episode, you know what you got to do. You got to leave one. So my only call to action for this week is I want to keep encouraging you guys to join our email newsletter. So every week I send out The Keys, which is like an online newsletter that has resources from the episode and just some notes from my personal life and stuff that I'm working through. So if you want to get that weekly newsletter, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join. And I also want to encourage you guys all, if you're on Facebook, you need to be part of the Dream Driver Mastermind. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/Facebook, or you can search Dream Driver Mastermind the next time you're logged on. All right, keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in episode 155. Bye, guys.